Maybe some people have told you that in order to speak English naturally, you just need to passively listen and watch English stuff. And yeah, you certainly ran home and excitedly turned on your TV and of course started watching. After that, you listened and of course, in your mind, you silently expect that after all these hours of listening and watching, you would be able to speak English naturally. You see that you're finished at your starting line and you have just moved a little bit and you start to get discouraged and unmotivated. Well, you don't seem to understand anything that you're watching and your whole process is not effective, right? But let me add just one more thing. And then you start to wonder, how can kids do it so easily? Because nowadays, a lot of parents are applying that passively watching and listening method on their kids. And the results turned out so well. Their kids know how to speak English really naturally, right? Very naturally. And you start to wonder, why does it work for you? Why doesn't that method work for you? Yes, I've had the same question like you too. And so I've decided to do a little research to dive deeper and find the answer to the question that is, why doesn't that method work for adults? And why does it work so well for children? And in this video, I've decided to share with you the answer to two questions that you may have. The first one is that why doesn't the passively watching and listening method work for adults? And the second one is that how can adults solve this problem? So there are a few reasons why this method doesn't work for adults. The first reason is because you don't have enough data to start watching and listening. When you don't have the amount of vocabularies or the amount of grammatical structures required to understand the most basic things, then you're just basically listening to sounds being made by the native speakers. It's just like you're listening to the birds chirping or the cats purring. You're just listening to sounds without understanding any pieces of information that the speaker wants to convey. You don't understand anything, so you're just basically listening to sounds. And that is the first reason. You don't have enough data and information and knowledge to start passively watching and listening. After the explanation, or after the first reason at this point, you may have another question popping in your mind. Well, kids, they also have nothing in their minds too. They're just like me, that don't have any information in their mind. Then why does this method work so well for them? Well, before I give you the answer to all those questions that you're having, let me just explain how kids learn English. Well, kids learning English are just like you learning your mother tongue. When you were little, you also have nothing in your mind, but you start to listen to the people around you talk to each other and communicate, and then you start to absorb their intonation and their words. Then you start to mimic them. After so many times hearing the same words, you start to mimic them. And then when you have enough data in your mind, you start to speak out with all the intonation, the words, the grammar that you heard from the people around you. Kids are like that too. When they listen, they absorb the intonation and they start to mimic the sounds of the native speakers. And when they watch, they learn how to use the vocabularies that they've heard and the intonations that they've heard in context to understand, oh, this is the case, this is the situation when I use this word, and oh, this is the situation when I use this type of intonation. And that's how they learn English so naturally. But note this, there is one major difference between kids and adults, And that, well, except for the age difference, of course, and that is kids are not heavily affected by their mother tongue, but adults, the opposite of kids, is that they're heavily affected by their mother tongue. And that is the answer key to the question that you're having. Adults are heavily affected by their mother tongue because they have been exposed to that kind of language for their entire life. And that's how they often have a tendency to impose the language, the structures, the vocabularies of their mother tongue to English. And that creates a barrier between them and English. Instead of just basically understanding natural English and speaking natural English out, they have to try to impose all of those structures of their mother tongue to English. And that is how their English, they don't really understand the native speakers and they cannot speak English out naturally. The third reason is that adults learn English with a brain that is too smart. I often say they're too smart because they have a tendency they have a demand to understand everything that they come in association with. They want the answer. And that's why when they started to learn English, a language that they know nothing about, they often have a tendency to translate from English to their mother tongue in order to understand, oh, what's that guy saying? What's that dude talking about? Yeah, they want the answer. And in order to understand English, there's one only way they have to translate. But that is another barrier for them. In order to think and speak in English naturally, you have to train your mind to think in English. And of course, translating is not the right way to learn English. So now that you know the reasons why that passively watching and listening method doesn't work for adults, how can you solve it? So let's jump right into question number 2. How can you get yourself out of this problem? I'm not saying that passively watching and listening is not good for an English learning process. It shouldn't be the first step of your overall English learning journey. You don't have enough data in your mind in order to make that process effective. You don't have enough information to understand. And that's why the first step, you need a step before passively watching and listening. And that step is no other than actively learning English. And to be more specific, actively absorbing information. You need more knowledge about English to understand part of the things that you're watching and listening so that you can at least learn something and make that process more effective. And thus, you will not lose motivation. If everything is new for you, then of course you will lose motivation, right? And there's only one way to put all those information in your mind to get the first step done, and that is to memorize. But how can you get this first step done? It is to memorize words and vocabularies, right? But don't just get a dictionary or a long list of words and start to memorize like 5 or 7 words every day. Yeah, that just works for short-term memory, and you won't be able to connect it to real-life context and actually use them effectively. And now, in this video, I will also share with you 6 steps in order to memorize vocabularies effectively. All you need is a passage with a story plot or a situation in order to connect all those vocabularies together. And you can find lots of short passages on this website. But here is the more important thing, a passage that is suitable for you and your English level. In order for you to have an easier approach to the content, to the whole overall English language, and to keep you motivated when you're learning English. The second step is to read through the passage quickly and find new words that you don't know. After that, look it up on the dictionary and then, listen to the pronunciation of the native speakers carefully and repeat that pronunciation multiple times. Well, here's a note. Always remember to read the English explanation of that word before reading the Vietnamese meaning. Just try and see if you can understand the meaning of that word just by reading the English explanation and see if you really need the Vietnamese meaning. Third step is, of course, listen to the passage again and again and again. This will help you to absorb the natural intonation of the native speakers, and it will also help you to remember the vocabularies and the grammatical structures naturally. And this process of listening will also help you to memorize the passage better. And of course, you guys all know why. The information is continuously being poured into your mind through the audio, and thus it will help you to learn everything and remember everything naturally. The fourth step is to apply the method called shadowing. So by copying how native speakers speak English, you can naturally learn the pronunciation of different words, the intonation of English in natural conversations, in natural daily situations, and thus you can learn how to speak English naturally. And when you're shadowing, you have to use your ears to listen to the native speakers and your eyes to read the letters in order to catch up with the native speakers, right? And that basically creates an interaction between language learning and your brain, thus helping this memorizing process more easily. And that is the fourth step, shadowing. The fifth step is, of course, to memorize the passage. It will help you to revise, go over again. All of those things you've learned come in association with them more often, and memorizing will also help you to make all of that knowledge yours. Make all of those knowledge yours, and so you can get it out and use it naturally whenever you want. The sixth step, and also the last step, is to rewrite the passage. Well, you can either rewrite it based on your memory or your imagination. Based on the topic of the passage that you've memorized, you can write a whole new story based on things you've learned. The floor is yours. But both ways, they have the same benefits, is that they will help you, of course, to revise all the things you've learned. And during the process of rewriting, you will have to find in your memory system all of the things you've learned, which will help you use the stuff you've learned more naturally and more creative instead of just sticking to the passage that you've memorized. So that is the sixth step. Well, after that, feel free to practice in front of the mirror every day, or you can record yourself and listen to yourself to see if there are any points that needs improving. So I guess that's it for today's videos. In this video, I've given you the answer to 2 of your questions, and I've shared with you the ways that I've learned. Well, I guess that different people can have different ways of learning, can have different opinions on this topic, but it's just my way. I've applied this and I found it effective, and I really want to share with you in this video today. I really hope that you find this video helpful, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!